on September 30, 2023. It is the last day of fiscal year 2023 in the United States. If Congress cannot agree on a federal budget for the new fiscal year, the federal government, which does not have enough funds, will have to close or partially close all non-essential services such as national parks, museums, and passport processing. Federal employees in essential positions such as border patrol and airport security need to work without pay. At that time, many people thought that the US government might shut down, but they did not expect that the problem became more and more serious and the conflicts intensified. Several days have passed since the US government shut down. How are things going? Welcome to World Hotspot, where you will be able to learn about projects, cooperation around the world and important information about China. I hope you can subscribe to me. Let us discover more interesting things around the world together. Why is the US government shutting down? The main reason is still lack of funds. In the US system, the US government's expenditures mainly come from the accounts of the Treasury Department, and the Treasury's funds come from the annual budget. The budget sets out how much money the government can use, and the Treasury can only use so much. Otherwise, even if the Fed can print unlimited money, the US Treasury cannot overspend a dollar. The problem now is that the United States is stuck on this budget. Because October 1st of each year is the start date of the new fiscal year in the United States. If the latest fiscal year's budget bill is not passed by Congress, then the US government will have no funds and will have no choice but to shut down. So why does the US Congress block the passage of Biden's fiscal budget? Mainly because the US government spends too much. In June, the United States faced a debt ceiling crisis, and the risk of a dollar collapse was imminent. However, at the last minute, Biden and House Speaker McCarthy each made concessions and introduced a new debt ceiling bill. It is understood that they are limiting US spending to $1.59 trillion and $1.61 trillion in 2024 and 2025. This is equivalent to reducing the fiscal deficit by $1.5 trillion over the next 10 years. However, Republican conservatives in the House of Representatives believe that this number is too high and the United States simply cannot afford it. They require an additional $120 billion in spending cuts on this basis, otherwise they will refuse to pass the bill. It is precisely because they insist on their views that Biden's bill cannot be passed in Congress. As long as they don't budge, the US government shutdown will remain. This means that all public facilities and tourist attractions in the United States cannot be opened, and all civil servants cannot receive their salaries. Every day the government shuts down causes huge economic losses. The second reason is that Republican conservatives in the House of Representatives do not want to pass this budget bill. In fact, the Republican Party has its own reasons for blocking this budget. They believe that the Democratic Party's fiscal budget is too generous, especially in terms of military investment and aid to Ukraine. In addition, considering the current economic downturn in the United States, the fiscal budget stimulus is still increasing, and the budget deficit is 0.8% higher than in fiscal year 2023. This means that during the US interest rate hike cycle, the government still adheres to expansionary fiscal policies, leading to higher and higher US debt levels and debt ratios. Currently, the US debt has exceeded the $33 trillion mark, and has attracted the attention of major economists and research institutions. If the size of the US debt continues to expand, the US government will have to pay more and more interest during the interest rate hike cycle, eventually causing the US debt to completely get out of control. In the long run, the US dollar may collapse, and the US finances will also face the risk of collapse. By then, the United States may not be able to formulate a fiscal budget against China, let alone impose sanctions on China. So it makes sense for these Republican members of Congress to be concerned. Since the Republicans are stubbornly unwilling to pass a fiscal bill, does the Biden administration have any other options? Actually, there is. In the past, the reason for US government shutdowns was usually the failure to pass the budget, so the ruling party would adopt a method called continuing resolution. That means creating an interim budget to provide the government with short-term funding to keep things running while the dispute is resolved over time. However, this time Republican hardliners are very determined. They say they will not accept any temporary appropriation bill unless Congress fully reaches agreement on the 12 financial appropriation plans. Because of this, most people believe that a shutdown of the U.S. government is almost certain to occur. It is understood that the impact of the U.S. government shutdown goes far beyond the suspension of salaries for 800,000 civil servants, the suspension of military pay for military soldiers, and the closure of major government agencies. It also involves one of America's most important assets, its credit rating. According to a warning from the U.S. international rating agency Moody's, the government shutdown will have a relatively negative impact on the U.S. credit rating. Moody's subsequently stated that if the United States fails to agree on a new fiscal year budget before the end of this month, it will pose a threat to the U.S. economy. In addition, the shutdown of the U.S. government will further prove that there are problems with the U.S. government's debt-bearing capacity as the Federal Reserve continues to raise interest rates, rising interest rates, and the government continues to adopt radical and loose fiscal plans. The two-party system and political divisions in the United States will also weaken the government's ability to make fiscal decisions. If this deterioration continues, the U.S. credit rating will be negatively affected and may even be downgraded. Of course, the Biden administration has also begun to shift the blame to the Republicans, saying on the one hand that Moody's warning is market manipulation and highlights the risks posed by Congress. On the other hand, it is said that the diehards of the Republican Party are the root cause of the U.S. government shutdown, and they are the culprits that have led the United States into chaos. Therefore, we can see the so-called donkey-elephant dispute reappearing in the U.S. political arena, with the Democratic Party and the Republican Party constantly pulling apart each other, resulting in the U.S. government being forced to shut down. As the world's largest national government, the U.S. government shutdown has had a series of impacts on the economy and finance. According to historical data, the U.S. government shutdown will cause economic sectors to function abnormally, thereby affecting the real economy. The government is responsible for disbursing loans to small and medium-sized enterprises, and the billions of dollars of loans issued every day are of vital help to enterprises. So if the government shuts down, loan disbursements will be delayed. Secondly, the U.S. government shutdown will have little impact on the stock market, but will greatly affect Treasury yields, causing them to rise sharply. International gold prices will also rise abnormally, because the U.S. government shutdown is a major risk event for the international financial market, and investors will be worried. As the shutdown prolongs, investor confidence in the U.S. government will gradually weaken, which may even affect the credibility of national debt and dollar hegemony. After all, although U.S. Treasury bonds are known as the safest investments in the world, they are still endorsed by the U.S. government. Now that the U.S. government is shut down, it is normal for people to worry about the safety of national debt. In general, the U.S. shutdown crisis is caused by the huge rising debt of the United States, which triggered fierce opposition from Republican conservatives in Congress. This crisis not only revealed the contradictions and fierce struggles within the U.S. government, but also attracted the attention and warning of international rating agencies, which worried about the debt problem and threatened to downgrade the U.S. credit rating. After further analysis, we found that the U.S. government shutdown is ostensibly a government problem, but it is actually due to the U.S.'s huge financial expenditure and a series of problems that need to be dealt with. In addition, it is currently at the peak of the Federal Reserve's interest rate hikes, which also has an impact on the situation. Fortunately, on the evening of September 30th, local time, the U.S. Congress approved a short-term appropriation bill at the last moment, temporarily averting a government shutdown. But if the U.S. government does not resolve these crises, a government shutdown may still occur.